Afternoon, Christabella. Hope you're well. So I thought that instead of sending you a voice note, I would do a screen recording of your lesson and give you feedback on the lesson so that, I can use this with my tutors in the future as well so that they can refer back to it as a training. So what I'll be doing is that I will be looking through the video and I will be commenting on different parts of the video. So I think this is going to be really helpful. So just to note that I do like to watch my videos in fast forward, but I have looked through this video completely in normal speed just to get a full idea of what was going on. But this is just me skimming through it and giving you feedback on that. Okay, so let's get started.
Didn't you?
I'm good. I'm good. My name is Christabella. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm Leola.
I've heard a lot about you, and it's nice to finally meet you.
Nice to also meet you.
Yeah. So maybe let's start by getting to know each other for a bit because I don't want this to be tense.
Mm.
I know that coding, especially coding in IT, is a bit tense already on its own. So
Yeah.
I don't want this to be tense. It doesn't have to be too serious. I'm a programmer myself, so I know I know what you're going through.
Oh,
Yeah. So
Okay, so for starters, I like this icebreaker. It's very nice because obviously the student doesn't know you at all and they don't know what to expect. So this is very nice in saying like, okay, before we get started, I just want you to know this is going to be difficult and, I'm going to take you through it, blah, blah, blah. And what's also really nice about this is that you mentioned to him that you're a programmer. And to set that authority in the beginning is very important with your student because immediately you can see his sort of body language responds to that, right? He changes his response because he's like, okay, my teacher knows what she's talking about. She's not just a random person teaching me IT.
what are your prospects after grade 12? What are you looking to do?
um, I'm not entirely sure. I think I mainly think I was a bit forced into doing IT, but I do enjoy it. I honestly do enjoy it because um,
Mm.
I do want to work towards this one career where um, I'm doing gaming. So I did obviously need to incorporate IT into that because
Yeah, I get that. So which games do you play? Do you actually have a console or is it mobile gaming?
I play more console games. So like
Hmm.
yeah, they're very like hyper realistic.
Yeah. I can totally see how my husband is also a gamer. So I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that is very interesting. I used to want to do game modification and animation as well. So I think that is very interesting and I think you should totally go for it. It's actually a very
Okay, so to comment on this, I just want to say that, I like that you are staying professional with him in the bounds of communicating about, where he is in this. Because it's very important when you are working with your student that you are able to intuit what they're feeling in the moment so that you can guide them further. So you can see with him that he wants to open up, he wants to express you, oh, I feel forced to do this. That's a big thing to say and something that I will be sort of bringing up with him on a future level. But as a teacher, you can sort of intuit and take that as a chance to say, okay, my student there's definitely going to be dread in the lesson because he just shared with me something very sort of very vulnerable that I feel forced to do this, right? So it's something that you can look towards in the future. Okay.
not many people in that field because not many people are very good at it. So if you
Oh,
perfect your craft, if you make it like really good, you could totally make it there.
thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome. So we need to get through up until grade 12 so that we can totally, be able to pursue the gaming career.
Mm.
And I love that you're already getting a background in IT because I feel like everything that is tech related, whether it's gaming, animation, cybersecurity, software development, graphic designing, it's all, based from IT.
Mm.
And yeah, so I guess I want to know how you feel so far in the term. I know you were working with Wandile,
Mm.
and I want to know how you feel so far with your theory, and then I want to know how you feel about your practical
Now, this was a very strong start to the lesson because you're looking at him and you're saying, I want to know how you feel. I want to know where you are with this. And let's see how the lesson continues because if you can keep up this level of energy throughout your lesson, you will see the change in your student and you'll notice how as the lesson goes along and it progresses, the energy level starts to drop. So how do you then sort of switch up your teaching method so that you can keep your student engaged at that level of energy that you started with? Because if you can sort of intuit with your student at all times, okay, how are you feeling about theory, how are you feeling about practice, etc., that's the level you want to be at.
Skills, because I didn't want us to use an IDE. I feel like if we use an IDE, then it's going to be a bit too serious. But let's just use PowerPoint presentation text. I find that when I'm writing the code out or typing it out and actually explaining what it means and what it does, why it's being done that way, it's easier to understand. You get. So yeah.
Right, so from my basic knowledge of coding, I know that an IDE can look really boring. So I like that you're focusing on the visual aspects of the lesson, because remember, what you do have with your student is a visual, you have the opportunity of creating a visually stimulating lesson. And I'm going to speak about the different ways that you can use that to your advantage. Because if you are using, say, a console shell, which is just like, for tutors who don't know about coding, it's just a place where you write like code. So it can look boring, but it can be a great place to sort of engage the student. So ask them questions and work with them through the questions on the console. So if you feel as a tutor that, okay, I think I want to use this, I think that I want to jump into this, let's jump into this, and then we can come back to that. Don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to take full command of your lesson.
Um, so yeah, in terms of the between the theory and the prac, I think I'm a bit better with prac because I'm not much of a um like I like to do the coding and stuff instead of me like reading
Reading.
it. Yeah.
Okay, okay, I get it. I get it. So would you prefer next time we use an IDE? Maybe Visual Studio Code?
Mm.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine for this lesson. And I prepared a PowerPoint presentation. We'll use it.
I'm not much of a um I like to do the coding and stuff instead of me like reading
Reading.
it. Yeah.
Okay, okay, I get it. I get it. So would you prefer next time we use an IDE? Maybe Visual Studio Code?
Mm.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. For this lesson, I prepared a PowerPoint presentation with code snippets, but maybe
Yeah, okay. So you're feeling probably here that you did prepare a presentation with him, and that is something that, and he is saying he's not used to reading. So I can see now that, I can understand why he sort of dozed off in the future. But if you do find that your student is not, you can do one of two things. Either you train them to start learning in the way that you are teaching them, or you allow yourself to improvise in the lesson. Because remember, these lessons are very personalized lessons. So you should you should have that space in your mind to be like, I'm going to improvise with my student when that happens, right? However, I was going to mention before that it's very nice that there's a PowerPoint presentation here. And it doesn't always have to be this way. You don't always have to have a PowerPoint presentation. You don't always have to have that, but make sure that you are prepared and prepared to improvise in the lesson.
in the next lesson we can totally do it from the Visual Studio Code so that you see me doing it. Is that fine?
Mm.
Okay, that's perfect. Which method does your teacher use from school?
We use I think it's um NetBeans. Yeah.
I really appreciate it because I had my own resources, but I was just, wondering what to ponder more on.
Mm.
But she did me a really, solid thing by sending me the past question papers, and I have been told by Wendy that she covered most theory, so I'm just going to focus on the practicality of all of this. So it's a good thing that you want me to next lesson bring.
Yeah, and that's where it's at. Practicality is where it's at. And the whole point of this lesson is to allow him to start to apply himself in the lesson and apply himself to the work. And that's your job as the teacher, as a tutor with him in this lesson. So make sure that at the end of this lesson, you start off with him being, he doesn't know how to apply the work. He just understands it as a theory, but not barely as a theory, but it's hard to understand theory if you don't know how to apply it, right?
My Visual Studio Code, and then we can use that IDE. She's gonna be perfect. But now I chose the practical test from let me just check. Just give me a moment. From March this year. I don't know if you have the document. Maybe you can open it from your side so that you can also see what I'll be talking about.
Um,
The March one. The March one, and I have a question and give the answer. First, explain what is needed from the question. Give the answer and then the explanation of why the answer is the way it is. I know that a lot of people like to explain before they give the answer, which is, I think, it gets a little bit problematic.
Mm.
I need to see the answer first before I know why it's the way it is. I don't know if you feel the same way. We can totally change it up,
no, I think I do definitely feel like that.
right?
Mm.
Yeah, I think also because you're a gamer, I'm so glad that I'm working with someone who's a gamer. I'm not really a gamer. My husband is. Me, I play COD, the mobile version. So I like visuals. I like to see.
Mm.
So I get you. I totally get you. You're in the right place. Have you opened it?
Oh yeah.
Okay, perfect. So it's focusing on creating Java classes, which I'm sure you covered theoretically with 1DA. The Java classes, the declaring and initializing of variables,
So you're going to watch me probably go through this throughout the video, but okay, I just want to move a little bit forward.
and working with string data types. Data types are very important because if you don't declare it and you don't assign it, then it's not going to work. And then also the built-in string methods, but I didn't exactly get into it because I didn't go all the way through the question paper. I did question 1.1 to question 1.6. The answers. Hopefully we can just continue from question 1.8 going forward in the next lesson because our time is quite limited. So yeah, the first.
Okay, so just a note on time being limited, and this is something I see with a lot of tutors. So remember, tutors, it is not your responsibility to worry about fitting everything in the time limit unless it is something that is, say it's an exam workshop, and you know that you need to cover certain topics and you have 6 hours to do it. You're going to skim over the work and you're going to try to get through as much as you can. But in this case, you got to try to encourage the student to be like, dedicate more time to this, because if you're trying to rush in the lesson and put as much as you can into one small lesson, then it's too fast paced for the students. And I don't think as tutors we realize just how slow we need to go with our students for them to get it sometimes. So don't feel like, remember to try to set your own pace. And I'm not saying go at a snail's pace. By no means am I saying that. You need to also be with it, but try to set your own pace and know, okay, my objective here is not to cover the work as much as it is to get my student to understand and to get him to like catch up with his understanding, instead of, okay, we covered this work and now we're good. You're not a teacher. That's the difference between you and a teacher, right? A teacher in a school has to cover the work because they have so much of admin work and things that they need to cover. But for you, the pace slows down and we go through, for example, Java classes in this case. Now, does my student understand this concept to the point where they can actually apply a question on their own? That's your objective. So sometimes it's important to just sit with yourself and your student and say, right now, let me give you a test, a little mini test. And this is, I want you to apply this and see if you can. Just from there, you'll be able to see exactly how little your student knows. Now, at the end of the lesson, they should at least move maybe 50% where okay, they at least understand the concept of why we have a string and why blah, blah, blah. Or we've moved further than that and they can actually apply a question or know how to interpret a question.
First question is string basics and comparisons. And the question is asking you to create a class called word long, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the same question that we're opening. I was just trying to make sure that we're opening the same thing. Yeah, so we're being asked to create a class called word long. And this is basically declaring a variable because it's a sentence, right?
Okay, so now watch this, right? So you can see that your student is engaged in this and he has the ability to lead the lesson. Now, let's just quickly understand what is the concept of leading a lesson for a student. Right now, you can see that the tutor is leading the lesson. She's taking him through the questions, she's taking him through what's being asked and what to go through next, right? However, if you find that you are leading the lesson for too long, for more than like a few sentences at a time, you need to stop and ask yourself, okay, I need to be sure that I give my student the chance to lead the lesson, because otherwise they're just going to fall off into the distance and lose track. So instead of going through where you say, for example, you're saying, okay, we're declaring a variable and it's a sentence and we're going through what we need to do next, ask the student, like, what do I do in this situation? So I lost track of what you said there, but I'm going to probably go through this concept again moving forward.
And initializing it. So basically, there's two topics in here: declaring and initializing variables. So every time when you're reading a question, you need to try as much as you can to find the keywords. The good thing about coding, especially most coding languages, if I can say, the questions are usually just self-explanatory of what you're supposed to do, what you need to be doing. So if it says, like right here, it's saying create a new class for long. Fine, it's not explaining what exactly is needed. But the moment somebody asks you to create a class and it's a sentence or it's a word, you're declaring a variable and you're initializing it. You declare it and you initialize so that it works. Yeah. And then so what I did.
So in this case, you told him that it's written in the question that you need to declare and initialize this variable. But let's check in with our student to see where he is with this, because now I can see that as a teacher, you are getting into it. You are starting to really, involve yourself and start the work, right? It's your thing. You love it. You enjoy it. However, this is the part where he's now, I think he's falling behind you, and you'll see moving forward. So be sure to ask him, how would this happen? What does it mean to declare a variable? What does it mean to initialize a variable? Right? So that he has to sit now and think. If he gets it wrong, good, very good. That means he's making progress because he's creating new neural pathways in his brain about what it actually means. Okay.
Did was write code, and you're going to see from all the resources that I'm going to be giving you, every code snippet, I always put comments, because if you don't comment it out, you might lose you're not going to keep track of it. So it started as basically programmers just trying to keep track of what they're doing, and then as years went by, programming revolutionized and people grew in software development, we understood that actually commenting out is good for your train of thought. It's good for your train of thought, and you'll be understanding more as you go. So what I did was write a code snippet, and I commented out your name, commented out the class word long, because it is an exam. You're going to have to be doing that.
So I love that you're teaching him best practices. Make sure that he is able to follow along before you actually, because he might not even have picked up on this best practice, depending on where his mind is about this. Like, is he actually still following the lesson? So be sure to check in with him about that.
And then I wrote public class, word long, and then the curly bracket. Indenting is very important. Yes, why is it important?
Indent. Oh, you mean like?
Very nice. So you see, you caught him, yeah. He was busy, going on a tangent in his own mind, because I think he lost you when you spoke about the declaring on it. You moved forward in this lesson already. He kind of lost you there. So I'm happy that you asked him, why is indenting important? Because now he has to catch up.
Did you say commenting out is important?
Yes, I said commenting out is important, and then I said indenting. When you're looking at the code snippet that I gave you.
Can you see that he lost you right there? So when you're teaching and you see that, okay, I've moved too fast and my student lost me, then go back to where you were actually in tune with your students. And I think being in tune with your student is a very, very important skill. And you have to, every single minute of that lesson, you have to be checking in with them.
You see here where my cursor is? The public class is way on the side of the picture, and then the other one is coming next underneath, like a step type thing. That's indenting.
Oh, okay.
This space here is indentation. And I'm asking, why do you think it's important to be indenting?
I think that's important because it like gives an indication of which part of the code we're at, and then I think also to give the code more order. Because if it was just a straight line, then you wouldn't be able to map out which part is which.
Okay, so yes, that's readability and clarity. That's the primary reason. Proper indenting makes your code visually organized, so that is correct. And in some coding languages, it's actually error prevention, because if you don't indent properly, you get an error.
Okay, so teacher, I want you to notice how your English levels and sort of the jargon with relation to coding is really showing up here. And that is smart. I love to hear that from you, knowing that you have a grasp of that. You have a grasp of the work. However, for him, with regards to this, I want you to focus on simplifying your language. So make sure that, say you say error prevention. I know that it sounds like an obvious thing, right? Error prevention, preventing errors. But if you are going into that concept, then be sure to explore that with him. How would it look if you did an indent in this situation, right? It wouldn't look like code, right? It wouldn't be able to be applied into the it wouldn't be able to be applied into the code, right? It would fall out or whatever. So you would need to explain that in normal words. Otherwise, if you just say error prevention, that's like a whole now summary, a whole probably few like pages of information in your mind. But for him, it's a new concept.
Error.
Okay.
Coding languages like Java, like C++. So you get an error if you don't indent properly. So you need to make sure that you know when it's just for ordering your work and readability, and when it's for error prevention and debugging. You get. So yeah, moving forward. So here we wrote public class word long, and I've commented it out that this creates a new class named word long.
So when you said you get, right, that was your way of asking him, okay, did you get it? Did you get what I've said? Okay, so let me ask you a question now. So if I was to write this out with indentation, why would it be important? Let's play with this. Let's open our console now and see. Perhaps with this kind of subject, the fun of the subject is that it's maths in application. And it's for students who are unable to actually do maths well because they can't interact with the work. But that's the joy of coding, is that you get to interact with maths, and that's the genius of it. So use that to your advantage. If you're explaining indentation, open, like, have control over your screen, have control over your lesson. When you open up that console and you say, you know what, let's look through this indentation. What's it look like if I do this? What does it look like if I do that? I won't lie, that's my favorite part of coding. But you have to bring that fun into this, where you have to show him how, because when you start playing with this, he will learn how to play with it, and he will start seeing the fun in it because he's a gamer. And the fun of that, you can already see in that regard, is that he would naturally, and I think any student would, just enjoy the concept of, how do I start to feel more in control of this by exploring the concept more. Okay.
Right. So now you've created the class. Moving forward to public static void main. Okay, that is just declaring the variable. It's called a sentence. So you're declaring it. And then string sentence. You've declared it, and now it's time to initialize it. How do you initialize the sentence? You initialize it by giving it a name. Should I call it a name? But you get what.
So in this case, you're saying, how do I initialize the subject, right? The content. What do you say? How did I? Just one second. Let me go back to this.
I'm trying to say, right? You declare it. You've declared it, and now it's time to initialize it. How do you initialize the sentence?
How do I initialize the sentence, right? So wait for him to respond, like sit in that uncomfortableness of this. Now, teachers, I want you to understand that this is not just for IT. This is for any subject. Say you're a bio teacher and you want your students to be able to start applying themselves to the subject. You got to find ways that you apply themselves. So, for example, when I teach bio, what I do is that if I'm teaching them about muscle groups, I'll make them physically do something to understand how the muscles interact with each other. Like, I'll make them physically bend down, pick up a pen so that they can feel the bicep and the tricep moving, you know. So that's just an example. If you're teaching maths, give them different versions of the sum and see if they can understand why that certain concept is being applied in this certain context, so that they start to play with it, because playing with a topic is basically exploring the ways that you can go wrong with it so that you know how to do it right.
Initialize it by giving it um a name.
Right, so back to this, right? Now watch how you need to get him to answer the question and sit with the uncomfortableness of him not knowing, and then how do I bring him back online without demotivating him if he gets it wrong, right?
Should I call it a name? But you get what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah.
You declare it. Let me make an example. I'm going to declare this class has begun, right? This class has begun, but now it needs to happen. Now it's happening. So what I did when I clicked join the class, I was declaring the class has begun.
Right, so perfect time, again, as I say, to pull out the console and say, right, YOLO. And there's an option on Teams, on Zoom. I don't know if this option is on Teams as well, but I think it is, where you get control over the other person's screen. So give him control over the screen and say, declare this for me and show me how to declare it. And then, great, he can see it in real time, the difference that it creates.
I'm initializing the class. You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So now we're initializing to the sentence. Word long is the class, the string.
Sorry, I
Are
think
you
you're
still with me?
yeah, sorry, I think you're just breaking up a bit.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So as I was saying, that we've initialized it and we've assigned the words, which are home sweet home, to the sentence variable, which is home sweet home. And then my explanation is right here. So word long, this basically defines a new class named word long, which is a blueprint for objects in Java. All Java code leads in classes. So that is why we're declaring a class. If we don't declare a class, then there is nothing going on. A class needs to be declared for you to actually begin creating something. So what you do is you declare a class. You see there's a pattern here. You declare a class. You create a class, you declare the variable, and then you initialize.
So now you are basically working through this explanation of, a lovely PowerPoint that you made yourself of each of these concepts. But how are you going to take this concept and impart it to the student by them actually it like getting into his head? Because here you can see that he's fallen off the face of the earth. Like, where is he? I don't even think he's here right now, you know? So all of that work of yours is falling away because he's not able to receive what you're saying. So make sure that, say you are working with him in this regard and you're saying, how do you declare the variable, how do you declare the class? Let's see what our notes are. I'm reading through the notes. How do I apply these notes to a real life situation? As simple as that, right? And then you go and apply it, and then you check for understanding with him.
Yes. But I'm going to give you those resources so they'll be available to you, and I've written them in pretty simple English so that it doesn't feel like you're reading a textbook. Textbooks can be very overwhelming.
Think that you're teaching a child. Think that you are teaching, because the way this child is learning, he's not learning like you in university, where you would be like, okay, get yourself back on track. I need to focus. I need to understand what the teacher's saying. I need to find a way to apply it. No. Think you are teaching a child who has no ability of his own to actually go and apply this on his own. Nothing at all. So you have to go and say, okay, you know what? How do I make you apply this? How do I get you to understand this for you, so that you start to like subconsciously develop the skill? Like, it's your job, like it's your focus is to teach your student how to think when learning, how to learn, how to get themselves from the space where he is right now, where he literally doesn't know he's coming or he's going, to, okay, how do I get myself to the point where I know the work, right? Where I understand this concept. And one of the biggest things is, I see a question and I need to understand how to unpack that question.
I actually don't use a textbook ever. I use I use questions. Give me a question and then I will find the answer. Yeah. Yeah. So the second line of code, which is this one, public static void main string, the words they when we
Okay. So in this case, I'm looking at code, I'm looking at this, and it's looking like just a whole lot of writing, right? It means something to you as a coder because you understand the concept. You can visualize the after effect of it. However, for the student, I want something more visually intriguing and appealing. Oops, looks like I lost my place. Just give me a second. So obviously now this doesn't mean now you have to go and create something on your own, but let me show you how to sort of like zhuzh up your lesson in regards to this. Right? So I want this to be visually stimulating. So I'm going to come back to that, but also this is your time to decipher what are his foundational blocks. I mean, does he understand enough to be able to even write this out, to be able to answer this question? So when you ask him the question of how would you go about this question, Luyolo? How would you answer this question? Then he'll say, okay, maybe I need to create a string. Okay, how do you create a string? And then he'll say the first few parts, and then he won't be able to write the entire code, the entire first line. So you get an idea that, okay, what he does understand is what is a variable. For example, he understands that. but he doesn't understand anything beyond that, right? I'm just giving an example. However, in this case, you take a moment and say, right, my student is completely out of it.
When we
And I want to show you an example of how you'd know that.
give me a question and then I will find the answer. Yeah. Yeah. So the second line of code, which is this one, public static void main string, the words when we declare the sentence, the explanation for that was that is the main method. That's the entry point for the execution for the program. So now we've created it, we've created the class, and now we are executing. We're executing, and for you to execute, you need an entry point, right? Declaring a variable named sentence that can hold a sentence, which is a string. A sentence is a string. So when you're declaring.
So remember that when you're teaching something, you never, ever just teach a concept without asking what it is first. So if you say a sentence is a string, before saying that, just stop yourself and say, let me ask him a question. What is a sentence? What is a sentence in regards to this? How would I be able to say that something is a sentence in coding? See what he says. His answer is obviously supposed to be, it's a string, right? Then he will be able to remember what you just said. And remember that an advanced teacher understands the concept of the teacher talking time versus a student talking time, right? 80-20, maximum 60-40. 60% of the time, your student speaks. 40% of the time, you are speaking. And a lot of the times, it's 80% of the time your student speaks, works, applies themselves, does, goes through the presentation, goes through the work that you give them, whatever it is, but it's their engagement. 20% of the time, you're just guiding them to be engaged, right? Because remember something, you have to find a way to conserve your energy as a teacher. Because otherwise, if you're spending 3 hours talking and talking and talking, you are going to sort of drain out and lose that high level of energy that you start the lesson with. And ultimately, the ability to get your student to really learn sort of dwindles and diminishes because you're not able to keep your energy levels up. So make sure you're checking in with yourself at all times and saying, am I just over talking? Am I just losing my touch here? Am I just going too far with this because my student is just falling off? Okay. Because what happens is that if you are doing all of the heavy lifting in the lesson, if you're the one doing all the talking and all of the explaining and going through the question yourself, what happens is that your student takes a back seat and then it turns into passive learning. And so they don't learn anything because, as you know, as a teacher, and you'll notice this as you start getting more advanced and having more experience in your teaching, that students are able to only learn if they apply themselves, right? So let's move on to how this can be more visually stimulating, right? So instead of taking the slack of trying to make this lesson exciting on your own, which is like really, really hard, instead, just find a YouTube video that matches with what you're teaching and take your student through it. Now, you want to teach your student how to go through classes in Java, right? So I found a video. Now, obviously, you can look through the video, make sure that they are teaching the right things here and something that you want to go through, right? But this is how a lot of people learn code, for example, right? This is just one example, but any teacher of any subject can apply this. Okay, I'm not sure where I left off, but what I was saying was that, let's just go back a little bit here.
Our class. So I'm using IntelliJ. I'm going to go to File, New, Java class. And what do we want to do here? Let's do something a little fun here. Let's make a Pokemon class. All right, so here we see.
Right, so as you can see, it's taking up the slack of what he's writing about, the fun, the excitement, sort of some kind of like energy in the lesson, right? So you can use that to your advantage. Use the resources that other people have created on YouTube, other teachers, to make your lesson exciting and engaging, right? So as you can see, he's mentioned something like public class. So here's a great time for you to ask him, the student, why did he use public class? Why do you think he used it? Even if you know he doesn't know the answer, it's fine. He needs to know that there has to be space for an answer in relation to this question, right? So why did he use public class? And then you say, okay, it has to do with the entire program, or it has to do with just the program that you're writing. It needs, blah, blah, blah. So you can explain that afterwards. And then remember something, you need to, every say 15 to 20 minutes, you need to give your students a break. So either that's now a whole refreshment break where you say, okay, take a refresher, take a break, go do something, eat something, or you have a practice break where you say, okay, I'm going to give you something to practice on. So for example, you've been through the first part of this lesson where you say,
And
okay,
then we'll just
write the class, whatever. Then you can give him a practice exercise on this and say, right, here's your question. I want you to apply this on the console. I'm giving you 5 minutes and then I'm gonna come back and mark it with you, right? So definitely this is a time to test the understanding of the student, right? So the way that you test for understanding is that after you go through this, for example, this portion of the lesson, and remember something, lessons with students is broken up into tiny, tiny, tiny portions. And then when they build their confidence in relation to that, then only do you switch to something bigger and something bigger and something bigger. So find the smallest building block, build on that foundation, strengthen that block. And when that block is strengthened, then you put another block on it, right? So in this regard, like for example, the topic here is Java classes and objects, but there's so many things to break down in this. So make sure that you are, you are basically taking your student through everything from the smaller step and they understand it fully. And this is how you're able to then have them build their confidence in a way that allows them to apply themselves. Because remember, confidence is when I know the work, I can explain the work, right? I can explain it to someone. I can sort of, and that's when they have to really, you'll see them pushing their minds when you're like, okay, explain to me, how does this work? Explain to me, how does this concept get applied? So, and then also the confidence is I can apply this work myself, right?
for creating objects. So how do we declare and initialize objects? Well, first you want to just type the class name, then you want to give your object a name, and then you want to actually create the object itself, which uses the new keyword and the class name.
Okay, so this is going into coding, so I'm just going to leave it at that.
This is called initialization or assignment. We're going to call it initializing because that's what everybody says, but you can call it whatever you want to call it. I was going through, I think, some content on, is it Strays or Peter? I don't know, but I saw someone teaching programming in the Nick, and I was very interested. Like, how can you teach coding in Zulu? That's interesting. That means you're very smart.
Right. I like this, that you are sort of connecting with your student, you're making a joke, you are getting, you'll see that he's just playing along. He's very good at playing along and making it look like he gets it, right? That he's with you. But when you actually test him, you'll see that he hasn't, he's fallen off.
Yeah. So that basically means we don't have to call it initializing. We just call it initializing, but you can call it whatever you want to call it, assignment or whatever. So yeah, I don't know if you understand.
Yeah, so you said we just call it initializing. So further explore the concept with him, So what does that mean? What do you think that means in relation to this? And if his answer, obviously, you know what answer to expect from him. So if he gives you the right answer, then you go into it. Otherwise, you further explain the concept and say, okay, it's not, it could be said, it could be called anything, but the concept is that you are basically sort of getting this started, So you can break it down, because remember this in bio and English and all the subjects, there's words that overwhelm students. And when you flow with those words and you don't actually break them down and simplify them, the student then loses touch, because as soon as we don't understand the meaning of something, then our mind wants to like understand the meaning of the word instead of focusing back on the thing that's being explained. So make sure that you don't allow your students to fall into that trap. Remember, You're thinking for them. You are literally thinking for them. So be sure to intuit what is going on in the mind of my student right now. Where is their mind? Because lots of times their minds are just wandering off into, oh, my friend said this, and I don't know why I have to learn this, and I don't know what. It just becomes a train of thoughts. They just fall off. Okay.
Understood what I said. So I gave you a little bit of a quiz here just to check if you're following. I don't know if you can read that out.
Oh, you want me to read it aloud?
Yeah.
Okay. Which of the following Java code snippets correctly define a class name? My class includes the main method, allowing it to be executed as a standalone application.
And I've given you 2 options to choose from.
Mm.
I've given you a bit of hints where the differences are.
Oh, yeah, private and public.
Go for it. Just say whatever you're thinking. Don't try to think hard about it. Just say whatever you're thinking.
I think that private is the one that makes it a standalone.
Right. So I like that you encouraged him to express, to take a try, because he was not sure. And I think it's in this kind of situation, if you find that your student is not able to answer the question immediately, take a second to go over what the question is and explain the question. So say it says here, like, which of the following Java code snippets correctly defines a class and includes the main method, allowing it to be executed as a standalone application. Big words. So break down, what is a standalone application? What is, like, break down this question and try to explain it in simple words the way I'm doing now, so that they can then apply that. And then if they don't understand, because he just took a try, he just went with private and he ended up getting the wrong one, right? So in this case, you have to make sure that you go back and strengthen his foundations.
Okay. Why?
Because with the with the private static voids main string, it's I think does it usually like process the class name into.
Yes, it does. Also, okay, what we're trying to see here is if this class standalone application. So I want your thought process to think about a standalone application. We're talking about something like WhatsApp, for example. The standalone application. So a standalone application is public. It's public. It's used by everybody.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Yes. So the answer is the second one,
okay.
The one that says public static void, and then the code comes after that. That's because it includes the standard public static void method. The differences are in the methods of execution. It serves as the entry point for the Java applications. If you use private.
Okay, so just a note here. Remember that the more questions you ask, the more understanding there will be. The more questions that they get to answer on their own and apply, the better they will be able to understand the work.
It will not execute.
So in this case, you can break down the subject. You can break down the concept and say, right, so I want you to go and I want you to answer in this kind of situation. Would I use a public or private? In this kind of situation, what would I use? In that kind of situation, what would I use? And you can also then take a quick break and say, right, either you're giving your student a break so they can refresh their understand it, like their focus. Remember, focus is like a knife, right? The more you cut with the knife, the more blunt it gets. So you start off with really sharp focus, and then as you keep using your focus, it gets blunter, right? So take out time to resharpen your focus by taking out time to refresh. So again, instead of going through a concept, you can make him apply the concept so that he switches his focus to something else.
Get it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you use private, it won't execute. The entry point needs to say public void static, how it says. Usually when you're using maybe, let's say an IDE like, I don't know which one to give an example with, with Visual Studio.
No.
Okay. No, that makes sense. It's fine. It's not exactly on your level of studying, but when you're studying coding in a different level, like maybe my level, but like a bit lower, maybe first year, second year, you will find that when you open an application, you start, the frameworks that you'll be using are frameworks that will be already that information of public, public static void, private static void, that is like pre-written code that is already in there. So when you open, it's already pre-written.
So you said pre-written code. So I'm sure he knows the answer to this, but just ask him, what is pre-written code? How does it get applied? Right?
You need to do is to fill out the application
So your job is to be creative in the kind of questions you ask.
or declare your classes, entry point, and whatnot.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, basically the snippet that defines is public class because it includes the standard method, which serves as the entry point for Java applications. I hope you understood that correctly. If you did not, there's always another time. You can always practice it. I think in the next lesson we should be having what do you call it? We should be able to have an IDE so that we test out all the options when we're quizzing ourselves, and then we see what's working and what's not. That way, you're able to tell, oh, okay, that's not going to work because if it's private, it's probably not going to run as a an application. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly that. You're gonna take that time to test it out with him so he gets an idea. Okay.
As useful, do you write or do you actually type it out?
With practicals.
Yes, with practicals.
Oh, we type it out. Yeah, on computer.
Okay. No, that's perfect. He doesn't mind the indenting.
No, I don't think.
Okay, that's perfect. That's perfect. That's gonna make you a better person then. It's gonna make you a better student than everybody else because you're gonna be able to visualize the indenting. So even if he doesn't mind, he's gonna see that you know what you're doing. Yeah. So yeah, moving on to question 1.4, because in the first question we covered question 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3. This snippet of code here. That snippet of code covered creating a new project. It covered creating a class, declaring the variable, and the sentence. So this is question 1. This is question 1. You see it?
Yeah.
And then this.
Okay, so I'm just gonna skip through this and go to the important parts.
So that's 6 in the sentence, which is home sweet home. This is from question 1, right? And then now what we need to do is to write the code to display the number of characters stored in the sentence.
So you are still going through the example question, it seems to me. So here's what, so for example, you at the part where you've written out the what needs to be done. But you see, that process of you going through the question and writing out what needs to be done in the question is a very important process that the student needs to learn how to apply. So instead of writing it out, you can write it out with him in the lesson so that he understands why you came up with this, right? I'm not sure if this is the question or if this is breaking down how to answer the question. However, keep that in mind. So you ask him, what is the next step? What is the next step? To which he says, he needs to come to the answer of write a code to display the number of characters stored in the sentence variable. Let's break that down. In layman's terms, what am I supposed to do here? What is actually supposed to be done in a normal person's language?
So the thing with Java is that you need to make sure that everything is well thought out. We're not talking about words, the number of words.
That's a very important concept. Everything is well thought out. So you're going to ask him, right, tell me, what are we going to do here? And I know that with code, this happens a lot, where you have to understand every single step before you go and write the code. And as we have deciphered from Luyolo's response, right, sometimes the student doesn't even know what is expected from them, from their teacher, because they are so sort of distance from their learning and what is expected. So you need to push your student and be like, you don't know this. You don't know what is expected. I want you to go and to find out what your teacher wants from you so that you know what you're learning, right? You got to push them to sort of start. If you see that the student is like, it just depends on the student, right? But if you see that the student is falling behind because they are not that engaged in their work, so start to like sort of encourage them to take responsibility for their learning by saying, what, go like have an idea, tell them to start having an idea on what is expected of their learning so that they can take benefit of the lesson, right?
Words in the sentence variable. We're talking about the number of characters. Characters is say the word is Luyolo, the number of characters there is Luyolo. So that's 6 characters. So
yeah. So now you're explaining there. Say the word is Luyolo. What would be the amount of characters in that word? He must think. He must use his brains and think for you. Otherwise, this is a time where you think and he observes you thinking, which means he does no thinking at all because he's going to think about his own thing, right?
So you need to make sure that you have counted, or else it will not receive the, the code. So This is the code to write that. It's system.out.println, and then you bracket.
Didn't understand the value of this. And this applies to every single subject. You're trying to explain to the student why they need to use a certain method. But they don't understand the concept because they haven't been through the pain of not having that method, right? So let them work it out in the method they're doing and say, you see, this is why we use this method, because this makes it easier to do the thing.
Kit that, and then you quote it because it's a string. If it's a string, you always have to quote it. Always you quote it if it's a string. So you say the sentence has, and then how you put that in is sentence.length. And then you add that, and then you quote the characters. So the expected output has to be, for example, the sentence is 14 characters. I'm going to put that in the explanation. I'm just going to go to the explanation now. So the length method, here it is. Let me show you. Yeah, you see sentence dot length. That's the length method when you use pay.
Yeah. So now ask him, what is sentence.length? What is this method called?
It's used to build. It's a built-in function. So a built-in function is something that is already on the IDE that you're using.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's already there. I don't.
A built-in function. It does what? It counts the amount of characters that are in the string. What does the length method do? Tell me, what does it do? What does it do? I don't know, ma'am. Maybe it counts. I don't know. What? Think again. It counts the what? What does it count? Right?
Don't know if you guys have done practicals in on the computer before. Have you?
No, we have, yeah, multiple times.
Yeah, that's perfect. So you know what I'm talking about. It's already built in. It's already there. So what you do is this dot length, and then you
And by the way, you can see here he's tired. He is tired. He's losing focus. Right?
pick it. It
So you know what to do with regards to that.
knows what to do already. All you need to do is to know which method to use. The method's already there for you to use. You just need to know which one to use. So for
I like that you broke this down, right? You've taken this and said, okay, let me break this down. Let me pre-write out an explanation for him. And I'm teaching you how to teach that to him, how to actually make it worth your time and actually make your effort, make your effort worth it.
for the length, it's the length method. For the number of characters, it's the length method. Built in. It reaches the and that's used to print out the content out. Practically, it will be better so that it prints out exactly what we're trying to, take out in this question. Okay.
Plus sentence.length with the bracket. Yeah.
It's always the brackets. It's always the brackets. It's always the brackets, and especially the curly brackets because they're hard to remember. I was talking to a friend earlier, and I was saying I think we should definitely thank God for computers and AI because you don't have to remember what coding curly brackets or the square brackets are anymore. You just need to copy it and to paste it. And even if you don't copy it and paste it, if you put it in the wrong place, most frameworks will tell you where to put it. And back in the day, they had to actually type it out and not get any corrections. If it doesn't run, it doesn't run. You don't know why. You have to figure it out. So yeah, I'm glad that when your teacher is marking, he doesn't exactly look at the indenting. Yeah. So yeah, moving on to question 1.5. 1.5, 1.5. Do you want to read it out for me? Because question 1.5, 1.6, and 1.7 are pretty much going to be in one coding snippet, but you can just read the first one.
Because it says to create another new class called companions.
Okay. And then declare two variables, name 1 and name 2. Okay. We can do that.
Right. So good. You made him read it out, right? Make him read it all out. Okay. Then
the code snippet. Here it is.
So you wrote out the whole code snippet for him, right? Wait.
Okay, we can do that.
Okay, you're just showing it to him again.
The code snippet. Here it is. Public class compare names. So basically we have created another class called compare names.
So let him write it out before he looks at the code snippet, right? Let him write it out. Great time to take a break where he takes a time to apply this.
Do you see the, what do you call it? The method of creating a class. So you write public class, the name of the class, and then curly bracket, and then public static void. So you need to memorize that.
So he must write it out. He's going to make so many mistakes in this. You're going to come to realize exactly how much time he needs to spend on this. And you're going to know exactly what you need to focus on with him in regards to what he needs attention on personally, right? Remember that these lessons are personal lessons. They are lessons that are tailored to the student, not towards only the content that they need to cover, but the teaching method that they need that works best with them and the focus that they need in order for them to understand their work, right?
After that, you bracket again, string, square brackets, argument, DC. So what they'll do is they will always ask you to create a class with a whether you're writing C++, Python, Java, they will always ask you to create a class. So you need to memorize how to create a class every time. Yeah.
Right, so he needs to memorize that. So I'm going to give you 5 classes to write out, and you are going to write it with XYZ rules in mind. This is what the class is for. This is what's going to be its purpose. Will I use a public or private class? I don't even know what other things there needs to be here. You're going to apply all of that, and then you need to write them out.
Yeah. I was going to ask that you show.
And you take out that 10 minutes, 15 minutes. You tell him, I'm giving you 15 minutes. Go through this. Then he goes, he writes it down, and then you mark it with him. Right?
Your screen and show me how to create a class, but you know what? We'll do that some other time. I don't want us to, dwell too much on, the practicality of things because this is the first lesson. We can just do that in the next class.
I get that. You're saying you just want to go through the theory, but as you probably have gleaned upon, in the end, he didn't get it, right? Because he needs to be able to apply it in order to learn it.
Yeah. So here you have created the class, and then now you declare 2 variables, name 1 and name 2 to store string characters. That is I
to the code, and also to also for the computer to understand that that's
okay.
Yeah,
No, that is the right answer. Why did we assign the values as strings?
we assign the values
To
of strings with
a string.
to a string.
Yeah.
You assign it to a string because string is the main class. Am I correct? That yeah, it's the main class that stores like long words. So like
Yes.
yeah, sentences and words, and then for just letters you'll put like char.
Exactly. I wanted you to get to the part where you say he stores words. Yeah. So string, the moment you hear them asking you to declare a variable and it's a name of a country or a name of a person.
Very nice. Very, very nice. And I can see that you have this concept down. You just need to apply it more, right? Because you asked him this question, why do you need to apply it? And that's why he was able to answer it, because you caught it just in time.
Or whatever that has to do with words, that's a string. So it stores text. It also handles length data. Now we're talking about char, but that's a different lesson for something else. But it's also for text manipulation, which is when we, talk about the length, we compare terms of coverage that then we've done that. I don't know if you understand, but like this task is basically a reinforcement. It's a repetition of the first. What else are we doing? The initial value of a laptop. So the product name, the initial value. I start speaking and I start sharing my content. I was started.
Then it returns a positive number if the calling string comes after the argument string. It returns 0 if the strings. It returns 0 if the strings are identical. The if-else structure checks the results are compared to determine the correct alphabetical order for continuing.
Okay. So basically the meaning of lexicographical is basically alphabetical. It's comparing.
So now lexicographical, right? You're speaking to him about that. So let's break this word down. Let's break down the anatomy of the word, right? So say, okay, where does this word come from? Or how can he get an idea of sort of build a concept around it so that it's easy for him to remember? So, you're saying that lexicographical means, I don't know,
something alphabetically.
Comparing something alphabetically. So what does that mean, right? Maybe that means breaking something down according to its alphabetic, like ABC, according to the hierarchy. I'm assuming, I don't know, comparison of strings, right? Saying is like, what does a string start with, you see? So in this regard, I'm pretending to be a student and I'm trying to understand, what does this mean? So how does this apply to me when I'm writing code? What does this mean in relation to what I'm doing, right? So explain further, make sure that you break down concepts and apply to real life concepts. So say, if I was doing this in real life, this is how it would look. This is how this concept would apply to it in real life.
Maybe let's say when you compare 2 strings, if you're comparing them lexicographically, you're essentially basically comparing them character by character from left to right. Yeah, it stops at the first position where the characters differ.
Right, so now you've explained this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so now ask him to apply it. So say, if I had XYZ string and I was comparing it, if it was compared lexicographically, how would it be compared? Good. Right, let me make the question a bit harder. If I had this and this and this, and I compared it at lexicographically, how would it? So it becomes a mini game, right? So in that way, you engaging your student to play the game with you. So you are enjoying playing with the subject, with the topic.
So if your teacher ever uses big words like lexicographical, you should just know it's alphabetical comparison. Nothing too deep. Just give me one moment. Okay. Yeah, so our task is to compare the method of two names and display them in their alphabetical order. So what I've done here is I have done again what we did in the other, I think the second code snippet, we were continuing from 1.3. So this is basically continuing from 1.7, and this is the main method of compare names class. So we said in the previous question that the string names would name 1 and 2 are Jane and Jenny, right? Yeah, we said they're Jane and Jenny, and we said that lexicographical means you are comparing them character to character, not word to word. So that's character to character. If you're comparing
So that's a very good distinction.
Christabella and Loyolo, you are comparing the letter L and the letter C. And then the next.
Yeah, so when you're explaining this, instead of explaining the concept to him, say, what would that look like if you are comparing Christabella and Luyolo? And then he must explain it to you. Then you explain the concept, right?
Comparison is coming for U and H and so on. So you're not comparing the two names, you're comparing the characters inside the names alphabetically.
So in order to make sure he got it, you're going to make him apply it and sit in the discomfort. It has to be a little bit of sort of that healthy frustration when learning. If they're not having that frustration, means they're not learning anything. They're just very comfortable in the lesson, following along, laughing, smiling. There's no thinking. There's no like tension, mental tension, where it's like, what do I need to do here? How do I need to apply this, right? There has to be that healthy amount. And you also get to use that as a chance to teach them how to deal with misunderstanding, not understanding something, getting through an understanding, right? Because when they have that, when they feel confused, you say, right, let's break this down. Let's understand this one step at a time. In this case, it will be, okay, why is it not the way you answered it, but it's the way, it's supposed to be done? So let me show you why. So you help him to break through his own mental blocks around the topic.
Which one comes first and so on. So basically what I've done here was explain that you use a method to compare the two names and display them in alphabetical order. And this is the method. So it's if and else, always if and else, but sometimes you can nest an if else statement inside an if and else.
So if name 1 comes before name 2 alphabetically, system alphabetical order, name 1 space name 2. So you can take this time to say, let's read through this if and else statement and understand. And if you have like a pen or something, like a physical pen on those writing things, then you can write on it and say, what's this one? What's this one here? What does this mean? If what, right? Is this a function that's already created? What's this about? What is this about, right? Is less than what. You can write your little thing here, right? You write your thing here. Okay, I don't have mine with me, but anyway, I'm just using this as an example. So break things down. Don't be afraid to break things down. And I know that you are rushing this lesson, but never do that unless the lesson is meant to be a recap lesson, okay?
Else statement, you get.
So then in this case, you always tell the student, you say, look, in a normal lesson, we don't do this because you're not going to really understand the work. But since you've only come for this lesson, for this hour to recap for your entire paper, we're just going through the concepts. Doesn't mean you fully understand it. I can't help you with that because you only have an hour to get through this. But you need more time, and we're going to get through that when you do actually take that with me, okay?
What we've done here, I've explained that if name 1 comes before name 2, alphabetically, the system is going to print the first name and then the second name. Else, if name 1 comes after name 2 alphabetically, the system must print name 2 before name 1. That's basically what this means, what this if statement is trying to say.
Right. So Luyolo, explain to me, what did I just say? How would this look if I have XYZ names?
That the system should print out the name of the first.
This is a great time for him to go and do this work himself so that he is able to apply it without seeing it. Right. So you take it off the screen and you say, right, let's see how much of this you remember, because when they start writing it, they've got to write it from the beginning. Right. So say this would apply, say you are an English teacher and you're teaching a student how to write an essay. Then you say, okay, this is how you got to do it. Now go and write out the small little sentence in the way that I've explained and apply the correction the way I'm telling you to apply it. Then in that way, you know that your student is actually able to, then you can test for their understanding, right?
First name and then the second name, which is it must print out Jane and then Jenny. Else, if name 1, if Jane is coming after, if you identify as the inside another if statement, then moment. Yes, bit of a printed document, and then we start with that quiz when we start the next lesson. Is that fine?
Yeah.
Okay, that's perfect. That is perfect. Okay, so the expected output here is Jane and then Jenny. Do you know why the system has printed out that way?
Yeah, I think I see that. Well, I think I'm a bit confused on how they set up the dot compared to.
Yeah, you see. So that was what I was noticing, right? So now you can see the effect um of him following versus him applying it. Because now you're asking him, do you understand? And I'm happy that you asked him that question, because imagine you had just skipped to the next concept without actually checking in with him about it. He would have not known, and then at the end of the lesson it's like, yeah, I learned, but he doesn't really know his work, right? He doesn't really know how to do this. So it's important to sit with him and say, okay, do you know why this is happening? But that's after you have applied all of this, and you say, okay, you've helped him to apply it, and then you say, okay, so now let me ask you the final defining question. Why did this happen? So you go back to your original big question. You have your big question, and then you break it down, right? So you go back to it and say, right, so now tell me, what is the answer to this?
Explain to me what's confusing you so that we can get over that.
And now it's
I think
hard
just how
for him.
they put it in.
It's now hard for him to decipher what's confusing him completely. He might tell you, but now it's your job to play detective. Remember, you are more a detective than a teacher. Your job is to be a detective and see, okay, what is my student lacking in? Where are their foundational gaps? Where are their limitations? Where are the places in which he's just falling behind? He doesn't know that there are gaps in that, but you are going to help him with that because you're the expert of the subject. You're the one that knows, okay, this is how much he needs to know. This is what he needs to understand about this topic. So you're going to help him to understand that he's not going to know even the first part of that and what he doesn't understand.
The if statements. It did.
Mm-hmm.
I think it just because usually in the if statement I'm used to seeing like just like comparison. But then, oh, okay. Now that I think about it, it would make sense that they'll compare to it. Sorry.
Okay, just one moment while I check my Wi-Fi. I don't know what's going on.
Okay. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, so the system has to be sure that the correct order has been printed. I don't know how to explain this without practicality. I think you were right when you said we should do this practically so that
Yeah. So in this case, you feel like you need to go back, just take that time and do it practically. Just do it. Just take that time to be practical and say, I'm going to do it. Even though I've planned not to, I'm going to improvise because I am the expert. I know. I can see that my student needs to do it practically. So I'm going to take that call and I'm going to do it.
But as I was saying, it basically checks the results of the method to determine whether the correct alphabetical order has been done. You see it here when it says that else if name1.compare, you see that this here is what shows you that it's just trying to check if the correct order has been printed before the expected output of Jane and Jenny has been printed out.
I still don't think he was following with this.
Yeah, I have the explanations and I have the code snippets here.
But I can see that you're trying to press for time here. So instead of doing that, you just say, because he's not going to go through the explanation. He's actually not going to go through anything. I can tell you that now. So your job is to be like, okay, let's go. Let me go through it with you to show you how to go through this, to break it down.
I have a quiz that I've made for you. So you're going to answer that and then you're going to give it to me for marking. Or we can just practice it in class just before we start our next lesson. You just let me know. You can tell your mom or you can just let me know through the group how you want to do it. Shouldn't be a problem. Do you have any questions with regards to what we've discussed in the lesson?
So say you have a quiz for him, right? You give him the quiz to do with him in class, right? And then you give him extra work to do out of class. But that must be work on work that has already been worked with, practiced on, fully developed and everything. Then he goes and does the practice work. So the learning is not dependent on the practice work that's done at home. The learning is dependent on what was done in the class, and the practice work is sort of an enrichment to that. And you'll find that it will be easier for them to do their practice work because then they have gotten the concept down, so they're able to then open the book and tackle the work. But if if you say, okay, I've given you this and you must go practice on it, but you didn't actually go through those questions first or go through something like nearly exactly the same, they are unable to then actually break down the work and practice it on their own, right?
No, okay.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Nothing that you want me to explain? Because if I ask you a question right now,
No, I think I don't understand because yeah, it did kind of feel like a like refresher with stuff that I would typically forget with um when I'm coding in prac.
it's definitely things that you forget easily because the code of the application is not what is usually the wrong part of everything. It's usually the very start of everything, which is the creation of classes, declaring and the initializing of
Right. So just remember, teachers, when you are checking for understanding in the end, the way you check for understanding is literally baby level. You say to them, what do you do in this case? Like, for example, if I'm at the end of this lesson, I'm going to think about everything I just taught you, and I'm going to say, okay, so how do you do XYZ thing, right? So I'm going to look back at my lesson and I'm going to say, okay, how do you change up the visual stimulation in the lesson, right? So in your case, you're going to ask your student, what's the difference between XYZ? Go through those questions again, and you might not know it, and that's fine because you're reminding him what it is, right? So that's how you check in, because I notice students are very afraid to ask questions. They won't ask it until and only if they start to feel confident that it's okay to ask questions, which is really hard. So what you do is that you make it okay for them to make mistakes. So you make it okay for them to say, to when you ask them the question and you see their response is negative or their response is wrong, how do you respond to that? Don't be afraid to say something's wrong, but play with that concept. Be like, oh no, this is how we're going to do it, right? No, that wasn't right. Let's do it like this. Or, yeah, that's right, but let's see where you need to fix in that. So, in that way, they change their relationship to, instead of, because I think so much of the time, the student is used to receiving a concept where they make a mistake and then they just like, the person that's teaching it to them is like, you got this wrong. Okay, we got to start this again. Moment of silence and that whole thing. Versus, yeah, it's good that you got it wrong, because that means your brain is going to create a new relationship to this that I'm going to be teaching you right now. You get to break the old ones. It means you're learning. But if you don't get something wrong, you can't get it right either, because you're not even applying yourself to the thing to actually have a different concept about it. So you got to help them to change their relationship to getting things wrong. You got to help them to start to love the subject. And I think, I don't know if, I think we passed it somewhere there, but Christabella, I know that you mentioned in your lesson somewhere that, it's very easy. You said something along the lines of, it's very easy. And that's very important. You need to help them to start to see how easy something is, how easy the subject is. And that's why you're playing with the concepts. That's why you're showing them YouTube videos. That's why you're breaking down the concept into the smallest little thing before it actually builds on that, so that they don't come to such a big stop where they're unable to break through it. So if you are having fun with the subject and if you are playing with the subject, then you will find that they will be able to play with the subject and have fun with it, right? So you have to change how they see the subject. The more that you can influence their relationship to the concepts, to the subject. If your student is sitting there saying, I have to do this, right? If they constantly have that, they are not going to learn that much, right? But one of the ways to deal with it, instead of talking to them directly about it, which is one way, but another way is to start showing them how they can have fun with the subject without burning yourself out, right? So that is the skill that you need to develop with regards to being a good teacher. And these, by the way, are just basic core tutor skills. I'm not even talking about the premium tutor skills. That is on another level. This is just the basic stuff that makes a good tutor. Okay.
variables. That is usually the most important part, because if you do it wrong, then you won't be able to record anything. So yeah, I'm glad you understand. Do you want to maybe give me a recap of what we covered? You don't have to explain everything. You just need to give me a recap of things that we covered, in essence.
So basically we went over the like basics of coding, so like the parts of private, like defining the differences between private and public classes. And then,
What did we say that is about?
that the private class is, public class is usually accessible to everyone. So yeah,
It's the entry point of execution.
Mm.
That's correct.
Then we also worked on the like defining how to like defining strings and making sure we know how to identify what a string is.
And the data
So, like,
types.
Yeah, with
That's correct.
then we also worked on the spacing of the code users.
Indenting.
Yeah, indenting of each space of code so that the computer could read it, and also we can. And then we also worked on the if else with the
If and else statement.
yeah, and
Yes,
the dot compared to.
Yes. So basically, we say that the if and else statement, the computer.
So now you want to see if he really understands his if-else statement. So be sure, don't be afraid to keep him in that space of discomfort. He needs to feel a little bit of discomfort for him to start taking responsibility for his subject, right? So you need him to catch up. In grade 11, you know, the way he's supposed to be responding to the subject is with much more consideration of the subject in order for him to do well. So there's nothing wrong with sometimes sitting with your student and saying, look, your approach to the subject, we need to talk about that. How in tune are you with what is expected from you in this subject? You're going to carry on this way, it's really not going to help that much because you're going to fall behind. And I can see, I know students that do well versus students that are not doing that well. And one of the biggest determining factors is what? Being very laid back and not knowing what's happening. So the next time you come to my class, you need to know exactly what you want to learn. You need to know what you want to cover. You need to know how much of that you don't understand. So go and try to apply yourself to the concepts and see how much you don't understand. Otherwise, don't expect a good mark. Don't be surprised when you get a bad mark, because this is the behavior of a student. And you just basically lay it out for your student. Let them understand the difference. Remember, you are a mentor. You're not there to facilitate getting through a lesson. That's not your job as a teacher, as a tutor. Your job as the tutor, which is even more important than a job as a teacher, is to ensure that they start to see the difference between the student that they are versus the student that they need to become in order for them to excel. So lay it out in front of them. What are the habits of a student who does well? Don't be afraid, because if you don't, that's when you're doing them a disservice. That's when you are limiting them from doing well, is when you are afraid. You are actually disadvantaging them. You're not disadvantaging them by bringing up something with them. That's not your harshness. That's not being difficult. Being difficult is when you actually don't want to bring up something with your student because you are scared. That is when you disadvantage. I'm not saying that Christabella is doing this in particular. I'm saying that this is a very important concept. You need to address the students' their mindset around the subject, and you need to help them to align it. Otherwise, you will find that your student consistently gets bad marks because they are not able to approach the subject in a way that they're supposed to. So make sure that you take that seriously with them and show them what it looks like to approach it well.
Tutor reads that let's say we want to make sure that what happens. I want to make an example that is very easy. We want to make sure that the dinner is made. We're talking about food that is supposed to be served. So we say,
great example. Again, being able to integrate real life examples into the subject content is so important, right? Make sure that you're able to do that throughout the lesson so that he's able to apply that in, like, this is a nice one, choosing the food that is being served in dinner. I think this is what
so the output of everything is that the dinner should be presented, right? It should be served.
Yeah. So what would be the output? Ask him. What would be the output?
No matter the case, the dinner should be served. So we say if there's
how will we write that out as a, so give him the scenario and say how will we write that out, right?
Potatoes and chicken in the fridge, we are going to serve a potato mash with fried chicken. Else, if the chicken is not there and the potatoes are not there, We just need to make sure that we check if there's beef and there's potatoes. If there's beef, then we make the dinner.
And remember something, a core tutor, by the way, at Ola we have core tutors and we have premium tutors. So a core tutor is a tutor that is going to help the student to complete the work, is going to be good. I'm not even going to say a core tutor, I'm just going to say a normal tutor. But a premium and an advanced tutor is a tutor that helps the student to get to the point where the student starts to think, what do I need to do in order to be good enough for this lesson, for this tutor? In order to show up for my teacher, what do I need to do? Not what is my teacher supposed to do, right? So throughout the lesson, you remind them of your authority. You remind them of how much you've been through, how much you're able to help them, you know, in a way that allows them to understand that the answers are right here, and now they have to sort of match up to that level to be able to learn from that, right?
So basically, if you nest another if statement in there, the if statement checks if there's anything else in the fridge that can do anything that resembles a dinner, and then it can present output. If nothing of the nature of what the program wants to print out is there, then the system will not print out anything.
Yeah, this is very nice, but he's not going to get it if he doesn't apply himself.
So that is one of the reasons why if statements are nested in other if statements sometimes. Other reasons could be to add more information or to add more variables to the whole program, to make it a little bit more complicated. I think we will talk about other apps and how they do it maybe in the next coming lessons, but I don't want to overwhelm you. I don't want to overwhelm you with anything right now. I just wanted us to stick to basics.
Remember something, teachers. Your focus is on the student and the vision of the student that you have in your minds for them versus yourself. And if whether or not you're doing well, your focus is on the student and whether or not they are getting it. So switch your focus from, is my student perceiving me as I'm doing my work? And is my student seeing that I am giving them the best? No. Am I seeing that my student is understanding what I'm saying? And have a vision in your mind about what you want your student to be. And this is a concept I'm probably going to go into later, but it's something to consider, because you have to see the future for your student before they are able to see it for themselves. And in that way, everything you do gets applied to that, right? So it's a bit of a more advanced concept for a core tutor, but it's important.
About how to begin the entry points of running a program. Yeah. I don't know if you have any questions for me. Okay, no, that's fine. I think then we'll see each other when I'm going to speak to your mom, and then we talk about how many classes a week we should do for you. I don't know how many classes you would like.
Right, so I like that you checked in with him about this and then you decided. And remember something, you must never be afraid to say, these are your limitations. This many classes that you want to take, not enough. Not enough for you, because this is what you need to be filling in to be able to do this, right? Don't be afraid to show up with your student and say, it's not going to help you, because at the end of the day, when the student doesn't do well and they're like, I don't understand why, but they're only taking 1 hour a month or 1 hour a week, but they need much more than just 1 hour a week, right? Then you can see why. So you can always show them, you can always lay it out in front of them and say, this is what you're going to get out of just this many lessons. And when it comes from the tutor, it's very impactful because you're the one working with them, right? And remember that our goal is to get our students to the level that they could have never imagined for themselves. And that's what this whole training is about, teaching you how to become the teacher that takes your students to the next level in regards to the kind of person they are, right? In regards to the subject. So not only do they get good marks, but they also, their confidence, their self-identification, the way they approach learning, the self-reliance, their studying abilities, all of that starts to be affected because of the way you are with them in their lessons. And I think that's the greatest reward of being a teacher. Okay, so this is the end of this training. I'm probably going to do many more. And I would appreciate it as a tutor if you went through this training and applied it and gave me a feedback on what you've learned from this and how you're going to apply it in your lessons, because that's going to be your way of taking the best out of this training. Okay, so we are good to go. And I hope that this has advanced you in your tutoring, and we will give you more information on, core versus premium, etc. And other than that, feel free to ask any questions, and I will see you on the other side.